But you can't erase what you've already done. They voted to extend tax cuts for the very wealthy, giving a $500 trillion tax cut to 120,000 families.
You stupid.
President Trump did a victory lap with Republicans after the GOP passed its tax plan.
$3.2 trillion, just think of it, in tax cuts for American families, including doubling the standard deduction and doubling the child tax credit.
Now, the bill also ends the Obamacare requirement that makes people pay a fine if they don't get insurance. And while Obamacare has not been essentially repealed, as the president said today, the GOP is certainly trying to undermine it.
On Saturday morning at 2 a.m., they passed a tax bill. It's called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, shortened from the original name, the Billionaire Stroke Job Act.
David, give us your appraisal of the tax bill. There's been a lot said on both sides of the aisle in terms of what's good and what's not.
This is literally the worst tax bill the American Congress has ever passed. And I think as people realize that it's Donald Trump personally who has to be benefiting from this.
When they said this tax cut would help millions of people, they meant people with millions. Though Republicans say the bill will lead to a middle-class miracle, and they're right, because it will be a miracle if we still have a middle class.
The Trump tax cuts were supposed to add about $1 trillion, or supposed to take away $1 trillion of tax revenue. Congressional Budget Office ran the analysis before those tax cuts, after. Actually, tax revenue is going up after those tax cuts.
See, I understand the tax code better than anybody that's ever run for president.
You heard that right.
Donald Trump has put us in a horrible situation, and I would be going about eliminating Donald Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy. And that's going to start, I'm going to start by reversing the Trump tax cuts for the super wealthy and corporations.
The big winners here are the corporations and the shareholders in those corporations.
Democrats assert that the Trump tax cuts passed in 2017 were a giveaway to the rich. That's false. The income tax bill for rich individuals has actually gone up, not down.
But then he passes a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations.
That's false.
We're looking at someone who said he was going to help American families and working people, but then passes a tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations in this country.
Today's passage of the partisan tax bill officially cements the Republican Party as the party of the wealthy, corporations, against the middle class and the working people of this country.
The income tax bill for rich individuals has actually gone up, not down. False facts mislead the voters, and second, false facts lead to bad policy.
With these massive tax cuts, how does the GOP intend to make up for that lost revenue? Essentially, who ends up paying? That's unclear, and essentially they're saying, well, I mean, we're just gonna let, the tax people figure this out. It's a little crazy.
Whatever, even now today, Biden is saying, everyone's saying it's only for rich people. The Trump tax cuts only help rich people. It's completely untrue.
And look, the tax cut he passed for multimillionaires and billionaires. Guess what? When I'm president, it's gone. It's gone.
So I would think, I wasn't here in 2017, didn't vote for that tax plan, but I think those who did would say actually it was doing what it said it would do. COVID came, and I don't believe the tax cut was related to COVID.
It's a scam. And why is it a scam? Look at this. They put forth a tax bill that gives 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. They try to call it a middle-class tax cut, and yet 86 million middle-class families in the life of this bill will be paying more taxes.
53% of Americans pay no income tax at all.
And yet 86 million middle-class families in the life of this bill will be paying more taxes.
53% of Americans pay no income tax at all.
The bill will cut the tax rate for big businesses from 35% to 20%, the biggest reduction ever for corporations. But they promise it'll be good for you because of trickle-down economics. Now, if you're not familiar with how trickle-down economics works, that's because it doesn't.
Republicans will rue the day they pass this bill, and you can bet Democrats will make sure of that.
We know Biden has added almost $5 trillion of new debt to our debt load over the next 10 years. So yeah, just do the numbers there, and you can see very quickly, it's spending that's the problem, not tax cuts.
Donald Trump and his aides made 4 basic assertions for the tax bill. One, we had lame 2% growth, and he was going to make the growth rate go up to 3% or more. It wasn't going to increase the deficit. It's going to put a lot of money in the hands of the middle class, and it wasn't going to provide a tax cut for the rich. Every one of those things has turned out to be nonsense.
In less than 100 days as president, Donald Trump has shown us that he is the living embodiment of corporate America, and he represents everything that's wrong with the country. And, you know, really, we shouldn't be surprised that he's a corporate shill because he's a greedy billionaire.
But if senators and House members made a big push, Senator Langford, to make the Trump tax cuts permanent, because they were successful beyond anyone's imagination. They helped the middle and lower incomes the most, not like these Democratic bills, but make them permanent.
Those who earn the least, who pay about 10% in federal taxes, would end up paying 12% under this plan. So taxes actually do increase for the lowest earners.
I absolutely agree with that. With the Trump tax cuts that happened in 2017 and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, when we put that through in the House and the Senate, President Trump's leadership to be able to do that, when we actually worked it through, that it dramatically increased our economy across all levels. Those at the lowest end of the income spectrum actually had the greatest amount of rise because of that.
We were told that even though in the short term it would reduce the amount of money that the government takes in, that it would very quickly pay for itself because of all the growth and winning and all of this that would be created.
And I got a much bigger refund than I did last year.
Tax cuts for the rich aren't particularly stimulative to the economy, and Republican tax plans mostly give disproportionate amounts of money to the rich and to big corporations, no matter what they tell you.
My tax rate effective has dropped on the basis of the Donald Trump tax plan by about 13%. This is a really big tax cut that I got.
In the 2 years following President Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, tax revenues, total tax revenues, federal, state, and local, increased by $400 billion, way more than they had in the previous 2 years. And federal tax revenues increased by $240 billion. Not only did they not increase the deficit, they reduced the deficit quite substantially. And if you extended that over a 10-year period, which is how you're supposed to measure this, they would have reduced the deficit by maybe $1 trillion.
We are going to continue to hammer away at why this bill is so unpopular, at why what the Republican rhetoric and the reality is so far apart.